doesn't have to be a visual thing. It can be sensations, it can be color, it can be emotions, it can be music. So see, you are an artist.
It's just I go in a very different direction because I mean there's a lot of things about art that an expert will see that I don't see. It just looks like a painting to me.
Right.
And so, but then again, I can pick out minute details in music that the average person wouldn't hear on a recording or whatever. So everybody has their talents, but art is one that's eluded me.
Well, I don't know what I'd do without it, but it does work towards bringing me into the Chester River Association, and it's kind of a debt of gratitude for me to come to the Chester River Association and try to help to improve the river. Because being out in the kayak, I see the changes. I've been in Chestertown since 1977 and have been on the river pretty much constantly since I came here. And the way the river looked 35 years ago and the way it is now is so different. And I know any of the old-timers, the fishermen and the watermen and the hunters and stuff that have been here, you know, much longer than I have seen even much greater changes in the river. And that's what's frightening to me, because I see it as a world that's disappearing. The health of the river, the conditions of the marshes, and the growth along the edge of the river has really changed and degraded in a lot of places. So my passion is to try and help the river as well as help myself with my artwork.
And when it comes to the condition of the river, we'll kind of get into the Chester River Association. What is the biggest cause of the problems on the river, really?
Well, the problem is that people have been living here for a very long time, and it's not just one source of a problem that's coming into the river. Sometimes when you get into discussions with people, you know, some people will blame the watermen, other people will blame the farmers, other people will blame the developers, and people will blame, you know, the power plants, or industry, depending on where you live. It's a combination of factors that are going into the pollution of the river. The level of pollution in the river has changed. We used to have a lot more trouble with E. coli bacteria and sewage going into the river, because 100 years ago, 200 years ago, people's pipes from their septic systems, nobody even had septic systems 200 years ago, they just ran pipes into the river. So it was filthy, but it was filthy with different things. And now we don't have as much problem with sewage and effluent. We have more problems with nutrients. And when I talk to kids in schools, they say, but nutrients are good. You know, kids always go, well, that's what we eat and makes us healthy. But too much of a good thing is bad. And when I tell them that a little sugar is good, a little water is good, but if you have too much water, too much sugar, you can become sick. So what the river's got is a diet that is making it sick. And it comes from many sources. We have, because the Kent and Queen Anne's County is such a high population of agriculture, we have a lot of nutrients coming into the river from agriculture. But Chester River Association has an agriculture program, and we have 2 ag specialists who are farmers that go out and work with the farmers and help them to do best management practices. They call it BMPs. And the farmers have been, in Maryland especially, have been fantastic in managing their what's coming off their fields. The problem that I see is a lot of the nutrients that are going into the river have been filtering down through the water table for years, for hundreds of years. We've been applying manure and fertilizer to the fields since it started to be farmed, you know, 400, 500 years ago. And that has a cumulative effect. So even if we stop doing all this stuff right now, if everything disappeared, we'd still have nutrients coming into the river from the groundwater. So what the farmers are working on now, and which is probably the most effective way to counteract the nutrients coming in, is cover crops and buffers. And that's what we work with our farmers on. We help them to get subsidies to put in cover crops, because they don't get paid for that. That gets plowed under. And planting buffers along waterways and not applying fertilizer too close to streams and water sources. and that helps to reduce the amount of nitrogen, mostly nitrogen and phosphorus, that goes into the water. And what it does, you think, well, nitrogen's not bad, it's in the air, it's everywhere. But nitrogen is food for plants, and when there's too much nitrogen in the water, it causes algae growth. And you'll see it if you're in a kayak. You go up into some of the creeks, and the creeks are all clogged with this green and brown slime, and that's algae.
Urieville Lake gets a lot of it.
Urieville Lake,
when I drive by there.
Well, that's a real petri dish over there.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a big conference trying to talk about whether we should encourage the county to take the dam out that was kind of holding that back. And there was so much stuff in that lake, so much nutrients, so many nutrients, that we decided, after much study with our riverkeeper and our scientists and everybody else, that letting that all go would be a disaster, because it would all just go in the river. So it's better to just kind of let it sit there as a holding pond, and what do they call it? I'm having brain freeze here. But there's a name for the kinds of ponds that, they're sediment ponds.
Mm-hmm.
So that it would keep it from going in the river. That would just make the river a lot worse. It wouldn't improve it. So, but when you have big rains, and you'll see from aerial photographs, you can see big swales of sediment coming out of the creeks and rivers too, into the main stem of the river. And that blocks light. So the algae and the sediment blocks the light, and it keeps the grass from growing. And when the grass doesn't grow, the fish and the crabs don't have a place to spawn, and it's just a vicious circle.
We're coming up on a break in about just over a minute, but the bad flooding that happened over the summer with the hurricanes, and especially the one that happened north that caused the Conowingo Dam to open all their gates. How much damage did that do to the? I know it did a lot to the bay. How much did it do to the river? We're
lucky because the configuration of the river, it's kind of like a hook. It comes down and then it hooks up, and the way the currents came down, we didn't get a lot of that pollution from the Conowingo. That was really dreadful, and Pennsylvania really needs to address that whole issue, because there's so much sediment that's built up behind that dam, and it's full of nutrients because of the Susquehanna River is such a huge river, goes through the whole state, and all those farms that are working along that river have been pumping nutrients into that river for a long, long time.
And I guess that's one of the things we can get into here in a little bit, because we're coming up on a break, but maybe how involved are in regional efforts on this. But we'll be back with more as we have Marcy Dunn Ramsey joining us from the Chester River Association, filling in for Warrior Bob Kramer on our Warrior Wednesday. We're the Townie at 1530 FM 102.3 WCTR. Good morning. It is 9:20.